Dr. Rosie Milligan, one of the most sought-after speakers on the circuit today. Her live internet talk show, Express Yourself, is the most provocative, thought-provoking, and talked-about radio show on the internet. There's no holds barred, and Dr. Milligan puts the B in bold. She brings it every Tuesday live at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Dr. Rosie has been proclaimed the most provocative female writer of the century. Her books include Satisfying the Black Man and Black Woman Sexually Made Simple, Why Black Men Choose White Women, and the book Nigga Please. These books have raised eyebrows across the country. She has authored 21 books and published 350 titles for authors nationwide. Check Dr. Rosie out at drrosie.com for her books, articles, and archives of her internet talk show. Sit at the feet of wisdom. Dr. Milligan is indeed a timekeeper and scorekeeper. She is the clock, calendar, and almanac for Black America. You need to hear her.
Sunny California, you guys. Yes, that's right. We have a lot of sun going on out here. You're listening to the Express Yourself Hour. I am your host, Dr. Rosie Milligan, coming to you live, as always, with nothing but straight talk. Yes, straight talk. That's how we do it around here. My co-hosts are the wonderful Mr. Keith Swanson. I think he's on the line. They called him the AI man. People say, does he really exist? That's funny because they were saying that before artificial intelligence became a common word around here. So if Keith, you on, just holler. Let me know you're here. People have been looking for Keith. I tell them if you find him, catch him, hold him, call me and tell me you got him. There's money on the table. It's going on for over a year. Nobody caught Keith, and his voice is so distinct. I don't know why you guys haven't got that money. Keith, if you're on, say good morning. If not, well, AI intelligent is not on yet. My other co-host is Shawana Bordenay. She's a real estate guru, extraordinary, sell houses, buy houses, do everything you can do to houses. I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't start house cleaning service. She just loves doing things about houses. Good morning, Shawana. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing fantastic, Dr. Rosie. How are you doing? It's a beautiful blue sky. Oh
yes,
God.
It is. It was that way
Yes.
Sunday, and then it clouded Monday, and now it's sunshine again. Well, one more day we'll be into something.
Yes. I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at the clouds or the sun. I love it all.
Long as you can close some deals, right?
Exactly. Close some deals, teach people some things, make it happen. Yes.
That's right. I feel the same way. Well, you guys, I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend this weekend all over L.A., Inglewood, and nearby cities. Everybody was celebrating Juneteenth. And I did something kind of interesting. I started asking people about what they knew about Juneteenth. Most people didn't know anything. They said, well, I know it became a holiday. People started celebrating it. They said, like 2 years ago, I had to start laughing. People been celebrating Juneteenth for years. But I guess we don't recognize it till the white folks say it's okay to celebrate. So I don't know. I'm just saying. You guys know how I do. I just say stuff. But it's my opinion. It's what I believe. But anyway, they were dancing and drinking and just booging down, having a good time, Juneteenth celebrating. So we're going to talk to somebody who really have a lot of knowledge about it, who grandparents lived through it, maternal and paternal, and understand and pass it down. I think so many of us forget to pass down history. It's so important to understand the origin of this and look at how it has impacted our life today, particularly when we start talking about foods and our health. So my guest today is a longtime friend and colleague. She's down there in Texas, Miss Yolanda Wright Bozant. She's an author. She's an entrepreneur. She puts the E in entrepreneurship. I'm telling you, this girl, whatever she puts her hand to, I mean, she just goes to the top with an excellent graphic designer. She has done a lot of flyers, a lot of things for me. And she's just all around a family woman, loves her family, helps people into the community, helps so many people. So I'm just happy to have her on my show today. That's none other than Yolanda. Yolanda, how are you this morning?
Look, I jumped in saying, hey, I didn't know I was going to get all those accolades and caccolades, so you could have kept going. Hey, everybody, I'm great. Greetings from Houston, Texas.
Yolanda, you're in Houston. I'll be in Houston for George Fraser conference this year, August 2nd through the 6th. And the real estate, NAREB, National Association of Real Estate Broker, are having that convention in that same hotel. Can you imagine? And they draw over 500 people, and George Fraser draw a lot of people. We're going to be in the same hotel. So I'll be running from one place to the next. And I didn't realize you were in Houston. All right.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You can throw on a pot of beans while I'm there, girl.
That's some hot water cornbread.
That's what I'm talking about. So how you doing?
Yolanda, this is Rosie Trotter calling in too from Houston, Texas.
Okay.
I invited some of my cousins to call in too. Yes. Okay.
Well, good.
Hey, cousin Rosie Jean.
Hello. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
we can.
Well, hello. Blessings to each and every one. God bless you. This is Cassandra Walker Phillips, and I'm calling in from New York for my girlfriend all the way in Texas.
Well, all right. Now, what I want you guys to do is put yourself on mute, and we're going to dialogue with Yolanda a little bit, and then, we'll come to you and take your calls, your questions, or your comments. Is that okay?
That is okay.
Yeah, that is okay. And go ahead with your questions. Ruthie Jean, you stay there because I'm going to need you to come in and help me, okay?
Yeah. So,
okay, yes, okay.
So, Yolanda, as we celebrate Juneteenth, there's so many people really don't know what it means. All they know, a lot of black people knew, wow, we get a day off. Holidays were that for black people throughout the South. They didn't care. Sometimes didn't know the meaning. All they knew there was a day I don't have to take my butt to the field and pick or chop cotton. So whatever it meant, they could care less. It meant not having to go to the field today. It meant being off and being there with my family for a whole day. Now, there's so many people have no clue about Juneteenth. And it's kind of funny. I say it took 2 years for the Texans to find out about it. And now, how many years is it going to take for African American all over this country to really learn about Juneteenth? I'm finding with talking to people that people other ethnicity tend to know more about what Juneteenth is than black folks. So, Yolanda, let's talk about what does Juneteenth mean to you, and going back historical-wise, who told you about it, and how long have you known about it, and how did they express it to you?
For me, my mother and father are both from Texas. My mother's mother died young. My mother was 6 years old when her mother was murdered. So therefore, my mother was raised by her grandmother, her maternal grandmother. Her name was Lula Mae Earls Canton. Grandma Lula, as we call her, was the child of former slaves. So therefore, you know how sometimes we lose something with every generation? Well, because my mother was raised by her grandmother, for instance, I'm helping to raise my grandson, so I make sure he says yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. I make him do some things that maybe a parent wouldn't do. My mother really grew up celebrating Juneteenth because her grandmother celebrated Juneteenth. That's the day Grandma Lula's mother and father received their freedom. Now, my cousin Ruthie Jean is on the phone, is on here with us, but her grandmother was the sister of my Grandma Lula. And so for them, it was a way of life. It was a celebration. It's not anything somebody told you, because when you're former slaves and you're freed, you're going to celebrate that day every year. When you have your children just grow up celebrating that day. And back then, the blacks celebrated the 19th of June. The whites celebrated the 4th of July. And I think it's because with me, my parents came to California in the 40s, and most people didn't know anything about Juneteenth. And to be honest, I didn't know anything about Juneteenth until I was 8 years old. My brother was born on June 19th, and everyone was saying, oh, he's born on Juneteenth. That's when my mother explained to me what it was. It was the day that the Texas slaves were freed. What had happened was we're familiar with the Emancipation Proclamation. What do we say? Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Well, did we have the Emancipation Proclamation signed in 1862? It was supposed to go into effect January 1st, 1863. All slaves were supposed to be freed. A lot of slaveholders moved to Texas. Because if you go back in your history, I haven't studied Texas history. Ruthie Jean would know more about it. But Texas had been part of Mexico. And even after the Alamo and everything, there were still people in Texas who felt as though it was still part of Mexico. And Texas was somewhat of that gray area. So a lot of slaveholders moved to Texas with their slaves. And now just this weekend, we went right from where we are in Geneva, Texas. We went right across the river, 12 miles, and we were in Louisiana. So in East Texas is the place a lot of slaveholders moved, because once they crossed over that Sabine River, they were in Texas. They came with their slaves. Their slaves were their property. So keep in mind, okay, they came over with their property. And so keep in mind, slaves were property all over the world since the beginning of time. People have been enslaved. This was nothing isolated for our people. It was just a way of life. That's what people did. So with the slaves being their property, they didn't want to release their property. They had spent a lot of money. You could actually get a loan using your slaves as collateral because it was real property. Well, they came to Texas feeling as though the Emancipation Proclamation did not apply to them. Back then, they didn't have internet. They didn't have social media. So, yeah, it took a while. Once you understand, once slaves were freed, that was a whole transition in the South. But the Texas slaveholders for 2.5 years did not free their slaves. On June 19th, General Granger came into Galveston, Texas, with an army and threatened the slaveholders with fines and imprisonment if they did not free their slaves immediately. That was June 19th, 1865. That's the day we say that slavery officially ended in the United States, because the Texas slaves had not been freed. Why do we call it Juneteenth? Because it was a crime to educate a slave. They didn't know the months of the year. They didn't know the days of the week. They didn't know the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, because they would be punished as well as the person educating them. June 19th was the day they were free, so they said it the best way they could, Juneteenth. That was their day of celebration. So here we are now, 158 years later. So for me, I would say I learned about it. We didn't do much celebrating in California. But now my cousin Ruthie Jean, whose grandmother was the child of slaves, still right there in that enclave of East Texas called Geneva, she grew up celebrating Juneteenth. Is it okay if she shares some, Cousin Ruth? Dr. Rosie?
Yes, it is. Go right ahead.
Cousin Ruthie Jean?
Yes. When I was growing up in East Texas, we always celebrated Juneteenth because it was like Yolanda was saying, not like the 4th of July. It was a grand time. My Uncle Sammy and my dad, Clayton Williams, they would get a goat. And everybody, and I can remember my uncle in the backyard, we had a large yard with all kind of fruit trees and pecan trees. So they would get the pecan tree and they would hang the goat up on the tree, and you could hear the goat that's pleading for its life. And my uncle would string the goat up and he would slash his throat, and then the throat was crying for life, all over, just blatant. And they would, after he would kill the goat, he would put water hose down his throat, clean him out, cut him, butcher him. Then my mama and my aunts and everybody in the community would come and get a piece of the meat. They would put it on top of the stove. They would parboil it. And then my mother and everybody, they would barbecue it. There was no barbecue sauce then, but they would make their own concoctions from tomato sauce and hot sauce and all kind of peppers and spices, and put it in the oven. And about 3 or 4 o'clock in the evening, everybody would gather in a central place, usually the church or sometimes at their own homes, and we would have barbecue and the garden, the laden fields of vegetables from the fields, peas and corn and okra, tomatoes, and the luxury was for us as kids. We had homemade ice cream because we didn't get that. They would have homemade vanilla ice cream, and we would crank the old turn on the crank for the ice cream, and we would lick the. Mama would ask Mom, "Can we lick the spoon?"
I remember that.
And then we would get a cup of that, and then they would have those cakes 3 layers high, piled with all kind of jellies and jams because they didn't have chocolate, and then they made whatever. Oh, we had cake and ice cream, and then we had what's called Polly-Pop. Like Kool-Aid. They would put that in a big container. It wasn't much sugar, but we had Polly-Pop for our drink, or either red soda water. My grandfather would go to town, and they put it in the ice box, or they put it in the big tub to get big chunks of ice in.
That's right, because you didn't have refrigerators. You had ice that you put in a tub, right?
Right. Or they had they call it the ice box. They had a aluminum kind of ice box, but they would put the big chunk of ice to keep it cold, or they would put it, like you say, in wash tubs with the soda in there, and we would drink the red soda water, and oh my God, I forgot the delicious watermelon.
That's what I was going to ask you. That was part of the watermelon, red soda water, and barbecue, right?
Yes, ma'am, and ice cream. And it was such a beautiful time. And then they would, have church. They would sing, and we would go from house to house. And the kids, we would dress up. We would, before the celebration, we would put on our Sunday best. And it was just a glorious time for family to get together, to love one another, and just the simple times was the best times for because to ask, Miss Trotter, how was your childhood? I said, baby, I had a good childhood, because it was all about families loving one another. It was about no gun violence. You could sleep on the porch at night. You could take a bath in the creek. We got baptized in the creek. It was just a time, and now for Juneteenth, for me now, it has come full circle. It is about.
How do you see it today versus how it was in yesteryears? Is it more commercialized, or is it still family gatherings?
In some parts, I can say it's commercialized. Then again, a lot of people don't know about it. And you know what? I'm seeing a new change because people are realizing the struggles and the things that blacks and browns and minorities have gone through. So for my family, we are coming to love each other. And I'm so glad because my cousin Yolanda came from California to revive our family, because we are a family that really loves one another, and I'm so glad my great-grandparents, Papa Jack, who was a preacher, the Jack Earls and Dora Earls, and her grandmother, the Wrights, the Cooks, the 60 families who settled there in Geneva, they had the fortitude and the ingenuity to have land and to pass the land on to their children. So we are proud of that. That's the legacy that And my kids, they say, Mama, they always say, keep the land in the family.
You know what?
And
Let me just cut you off, because that is so important. What you're saying is what Juneteenth meant, that people were so happy to be able to own land, and land was so important back then to people, because if they didn't have land, they couldn't vote. I wish people now, and I always talk about that when I do my Living Trust seminar, they understood the important and value of land. It was even just to last maybe 10 years ago, you couldn't even get anybody out of jail here across this country unless you had a piece of property to put up. So our forefathers, those people understood the value of land. And I think as we celebrate Juneteenth, we need to hone in on what it means to be able to own something, to have something, because that's the problem in our families today, is that we're not leaving that legacy. We're not leaving that land. We're not leaving that place to stay. Even though we know a lot of people, that land was taken, by whites took a lot of black folks' land through the South. I know a lot of people that happened to. But those who had land, they held on to it. They didn't give it away. In other words, maybe it was taken from them, but they didn't do like the people do out here in California, other places. Just sit up and don't make any preparation, have that property going into probate, and it's going back to other people. So I think the points that you brought out, that we was free to do what? Free to learn, free to move up in society. And I think we need to go back and remember the struggle that our forefathers had before us in order to make us want to do better, because they did what they did without education. People who couldn't even read was owning property and doing stuff. So I really appreciate you sharing with Yolanda. Yolanda, you had another comment?
Yeah, she took us way back, when you were saying, how is it today, Juneteenth today versus back then? Well, of course, she could share it. I cannot, because that's not what we celebrated. I was aware of what Juneteenth meant, but I had never seen any celebration in California. This year, in fact, Ruthie Jean's sister, you country when your first name is two names, okay? So you got that Ruthie Jean. Okay, so Ruthie Jean's sister came last year with her best friend. In the country, we always say everybody is kin to everybody. Well, of course, she brought her friend there, and I said, wait a minute, you kin to some people here. Well, lo and behold, I looked up, and the young lady came back again this year. We had a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a 3-day event. Sunday after church, we do a big dinner. Ruthie Jean's husband, I had a bunch of food that I was bringing over to the church, and Ruthie Jean's husband, he had a spread by the time we got there. So she was saying, as we were eating, she said, I like your Juneteenth celebration. She said sometimes with family reunions and gatherings, it's just a bunch of dancing and a bunch of drinking, but yours is educational. And my cousin Grace called me this morning. She said, I learned so much this weekend. I said, Grace, how did you learn so much? And you were raised in Geneva. She said, I don't know. I said, I just learned so much. Now, we had a guest speaker who grew up in Geneva. And she was saying just what you said, Dr. Rosie. She said, for me, it was a day that we did not have to go to the fields. Juneteenth was a day off for me. There was the food, and a lot of times, we think about that, but we have to be careful because some people don't even know. I mean, it just depends. I'll tell you like this. If you ask a Jewish child, what is Yom Kippur? What is Rosh Hashanah? They're not going to tell you nothing about no snowman, Easter bunnies, a man in a red suit flying through the sky, coming down the chimney. Theirs is not commercialized. If we are not careful, it will be commercialized, and that's the word that you just used, Dr. Rosa, because as I looked at Juneteenth celebrations on CNN, other places, what did we see? We see music, we see dancing, but then again, you know us now, whether it's a wedding, whether it's worship, No matter whether we win $20,000 on Family Feud, we're gonna break out in a dance. That's just what we do. That's how we celebrate.
And you know what? That is a part of our. It goes all the way back to Africa. You know, the tribes, the dances, the jubilation, the celebration. All that goes back. But like you say, it's commercial. In some places, it is commercialized. But a lot of people are looking at the real root problem is to have the health part, going into your community, a day of work, a day of worship, a day of giving back, a day of plenty. Because a lot of communities don't have food banks, so they don't have nice schools, they don't have nice churches, they don't have a place where people, blacks and browns, educate them about to being able to vote, about how to go about filling out an application for a job. Just a lot of things, you know, so we need to get back to that, you know, and like Yolanda was saying, for our family, we get together in like 3 days and we have a meet and greet. All of the mistress of ceremony. As for me, I like to write. I'm a retired teacher. So my part is we always put together a book. Every year since Yolanda's been here, we've been had a book to celebrate. We have magazines. We have newspapers. You know, we highlight the people in our family who have made accomplishments from past, present, and future, and we're still going to do that.
Well, that is so important. It's almost like a family reunion. When we get together, we have to have a new agenda right now. We do. We need to get together. Right. Need to be more than about meeting and eating and going to church. It needs to be creating foundation to make sure these children can go to school or make sure they have a trade. Look at someone who's ready to start a business and everybody chip in and help them. This is what we need to talk about. All this dancing and, you know, that's how probably half of the slaves got caught dancing and jumping around. The slaves came in, just snatched them on up and put them on the ship. So we need to do more. And that's why I want to talk about Juneteenth, because it's important for us to talk about the real history of before that, when we was like, enslaved, couldn't learn to read and write. There were people that couldn't buy homes. When young people understand where we have come from, it'll make them feel real proud. They don't see us just old black folks. They'll see us as warriors, people who took nothing and made something. And that's what they need to know, that they're going to have to take their little nothings that they have today and make something because we did it. Let me give the number out for those who want to call in too. The number is 310-928-7733. 310-928-7733. If you're at work and don't want them to know what you're talking about, you can email us here at Innerlight, Innerlight Radio at yahoo.com. And this show is going to re-air tonight. For those who listen, I think you need to call your friends and people you know. They need to listen, because we need to take a turnaround from the Juneteenth and make it more than just about celebrating and dancing. We need to have the education.
Can I jump in here?
Yes, go ahead. You my guest. Take over now.
Okay. Well, you know what, Dr. Rosie, exactly. I'm not knocking anything. Thank God that we have a day that is now a national holiday. And if there's a big concert where they're singing and there's dancing, you know what? I'm all for that. But I know sometimes, you know, in church, they would tell you, it's okay if you want to dance, but know what you're dancing about. Don't be running around here just hollering and jumping. And when we're talking about educating the young people, we're not talking about something that happened way, 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 way back then. Ruthie Jean's grandmother was the child of former slaves. My grandmother, Amanda Wright, was the child of former slaves. My grandfather, Edmund Barrett, was the child of former slaves. Ruthie Jean's, her grandma, I'm not talking about 6, 7, 8, 9, 15 generations ago.
Right.
Her grandmother, Adeline Earls, was the child of former slaves. Her grandfather, Seth Williams, was the child of former slaves. We're not talking about way back then.
Right.
We're talking her grandmama's mama.
We're not talking about a long ways back, so we need to take it to a whole nother level. Yolanda, let's take a call here. We got a 760, and we got a lot of calls on the board. I can't see the number in the chat.
Dr. Rosie, I'm gonna have to go, but you know what? It's been my pleasure to get my input, and God bless you. And like I say, it's all about generational wealth.
Yeah.
It's all about educating our families. It's all about uplifting up to the next level. God bless you guys, okay?
Thank you so much, Ruthie G.
Thank you, Ruthie G. Okay, we're going to take 760. Go ahead, open your mic. Tell us where you're calling from and what's your point.
Hi, this is Preston Butler. I am the cousin of your guest today, Yolanda Bozant. Hello, cousin.
Hey, cousin Preston.
Yes, Dr. Rosie, God bless you on today. I've been listening in. This has been absolutely wonderful information. I have to say, unlike my cousin Ruthie, I learned a great deal about Juneteenth and our descendants and ancestors on this weekend. I have not been to Geneva area for about 52 years. I was a little boy when I went there years and years and years ago to visit one of my aunts and uncles. And so it was a treat for me to reestablish some connections and actually initiate some new connections. Even way out in California, I actually live in San Diego, California. And so I flew in because I wanted to be a part of this celebration. And so I would just say yay and amen to really everything that you all have said, and looking forward to what we do in the future. And I think our family is so large that Yolanda and I will be collabing, I guess, over the next few months or so here to talk about how we can help one another within our own family, because we tend to go to other folks because they have certain credentials. And what I found out this weekend was that we have all of those credentials within our own family. It may not be immediate, but you know, y'all got second cousins, third cousins, and all these other things, and they are professionals in their own right. And I think when that happens, as she was saying, you go to the Jewish, they give each other preferential treatment. We should be giving each other, just as people of color, preferential treatment, but especially as family. So if I'm getting ready to put a book out next month, and then Yolanda's done a lot of them, I call Yolanda and she says, hey, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. That's how we make sure that each generation, with where we are and the ones behind us, continue to excel and go to the next level. Because if we're not going to the next level, we're stagnant. And in my humble opinion, Juneteenth doesn't mean a heck of a whole lot. So I just wanted to share that and just say thank you for what you all are discussing today.
And
stay there, Preston. Stay right there.
And also, I think it's important for every family to have a book. The generation coming along need to know about those who have been successful, and they need to know about those who did not have success. There are failures in every family. So if a person feel like they're isolated, I'm the only one that's not doing well. Okay, if they know that Uncle Bubba, had some issue with alcohol, but he overcame it. If they knew that this was in their bloodline, do you realize that they would feel like they can overcome not just everybody who's a doctor and a lawyer, the common person, the person who did nothing but was a caretaker, the person who took care of their family when one person went to jail. We need to know the fabric of our family so we'll know how to interweave ourselves into it. So, Yolanda, I know you are a writer. Every family need to have that information, need to do a book.
Yeah. I never really thought about it like that. You just made a good point, because we had one cousin at the reunion, and he came for the first time when he got off parole after doing 28 years in the penitentiary. Mm-hmm. This man is a business owner, And there would be no way that you could pick him out of the crowd. But I never thought about it that way. Sometimes when we talk about success stories, include that story too.
Yes.
About someone who picked himself up. But one thing that I want to say with Cousin Preston still on the phone, our Juneteenth celebration, if y'all have never done Juneteenth in Geneva, please be there next year for the third weekend in June. It's unlike anything you have ever seen and unlike anything you will ever see, because we hold our celebration in the same place where our ancestors were enslaved. They are on the 1860 slave schedule in Sabine County, Texas. They are on the 1870 census. That's the first year that blacks were recorded by name. We hold our celebration where they were enslaved, where they were freed, where they acquired land, built homes, have land, and we still have the land. Every family still has the land that has been passed down from the former slaves. And I will let Preston tell you. Preston, how did you feel when you walked to the grave of your enslaved ancestors?
It was absolutely amazing. It was the feeling that people always tell you when you're an African American, when you go to the continent of Africa, to one of the real African countries over there, is how you're going to feel when you get on the motherland. That's kind of where I felt there. And I've been gone so long, and I kept telling my siblings and my cousins who are descendants of property there to make sure you do not sell any of that property. I said, we don't have to understand it, but we have to have a foundation. We have to have a belief. And when you go there, that belief, my belief, was just strengthened. And so now I'm going to make sure that I reiterate what I said last year to my siblings and my other cousins who own the adjoining properties, is that we ensure that we maintain that which was handed down to us and not take it so lightly. Because it's what I learned from the weekend, especially seeing some of my elder cousins. You know, one thing that Yolanda and cousin Ruthie did at the beginning is they had all the elders. Well, I'm an elder. I'm a minister of the gospel in the Church of God in Christ, so I'm an ordained minister, so I'm an elder in our church. So it was cool. It was almost a play on words for me. I said, oh, no, they're talking about the elders, the ones that are over 80, the ones that are over 70. And I tell you what that does for people like me. I'm 62, and it helps me realize, number one, my mortality. Number two, it gives me a greater respect for those who have gone before me, and they show me. You know, this is the thing I think a lot of us miss. A lot of us in the African-American community, we miss looking at folks ahead of us and learning from them either directly or indirectly. I never met Martin Luther King, but I've learned a lot about him and I've learned a lot from him. So we don't necessarily, they didn't say a lot, and they still don't say a lot unless you get them one-on-one. But if you just open your eyes, open your ears, and pay attention, there's so much you can glean and you can stuff into your pockets when you go back home and say, I'm going to implement some of this stuff when I get back home. It may be something small. We look for the big stuff because that's how society has conditioned us. Look for the neon lights. Look for all that other stuff. But it's the little things that I've learned to appreciate in life that make the difference. When I look at my family, you know, I'm on the cook and weathered and side of the family. And when I look at just the little things, those little things are what have made a big difference in my life. And so I appreciate what I was able to see and able to take back with me to California to my own immediate family.
Well, you know what?
And let me just one quick plug. This journal, family journal that was done, and I don't know if I told you, this is the best journal I've ever seen in my entire life. I've been to a number of family reunions. And, oh, by the way, it's hardback. Who does a hardback journal? So I am so ridiculously impressed with everything that I saw over this short weekend that I can't wait till next year.
Well, you guys make me want to come, and I'm not even a part of the family. I might be down there next year, okay?
You know what, Dr. Rosie, I told you that Cousin Ruthie Jean's sister brought the friend last year, and the friend came back this year, And also, let me just go ahead and brag on my family while we are at it. We maintain 2 cemeteries where the former slaves are buried. If they blindfold you and put you in that cemetery, you're going to think you're in Forest Lawn. Wow. Both of those cemeteries are immaculate. They are meticulously
maintained by the family.
Maintained by the family. My daughter said, well, Mommy, how much does it cost? How much you spend per year? I said, about $7,000. She said, well, where do you get the money? I said, we get it in family donations, because once upon a time, this was a thriving community. Now there are very few people there. We went to church Sunday, and I asked all the members to stand. 15 stood, but one was the pastor and the wife and the pastor's daughter, and so we're not going to count them. But it's just a small community with just a few people there. So they depend on the family to help them take care of it. But in addition to that, they founded 2 churches, one in 1860. No, they founded 2 churches in 1868. One had been closed by the Methodist Church when the membership dropped down to 5. It's been closed almost 20 years. Well, we bought the church as a family. Everybody chipped in, and we bought the property. So starting this year, we've been working on it, doing renovations here and there. And finally this year I said, I just want to finish this thing and get it done, have it over and done with. And so this year we were able to hold our Juneteenth celebration right in that building. It was nothing but a miracle. Preston, it was a miracle, wasn't it?
It was, because I saw the before and after photos. And when I walked in, you would have, if you had never seen the before photos, you just would have thought, oh, well, this is nice. But because I saw the before photos, I knew how much work and effort had gone into that just to get it to the point it is today. And there's still a little bit left to do, but I'm telling you, you could invite anybody in to come and sit on the pews. It was just amazing.
Well, that's what a lot of people are going to have to do, that's sitting out here in California, broke down, struggling, is take their butts on back home, because I do live in trust, and I got people with 100, 200, 600 acres of land. Kids never went back. I don't sell it. I'm not going. I don't want to be down there. Do you know what it's like? Have you been there? No, I don't want to have nothing to do with the South. We're going to have to rethink this thing, because I'm telling you what's getting ready to happen is, it's going to be a big migration, okay? Especially in L.A., because the next generation won't be able to stay in the same community with mom and dad. They won't be able to afford to. So we better really, as a people, start looking at what can we do with the land that God has given us when we are out here struggling. What can we do with what we have? We have something on the board. Let's take this. It says... And wait, it's 310-498. Is that person still on? I don't know if they...
Is that Barbara? That sounds like Barbara.
Yeah, that's
Barbara,
my number.
Go ahead. Let me have you make a comment, then I'll go to the board.
Okay, great. I had to hop off. Somebody was calling me, and I was just listening because to hear Yolanda and her cousin tell the story gives me chills. When Yolanda, and I don't know if you guys talked about this part or not, but she sent me a video of slave's grave that was so powerful. And then I called her, and she started sharing with me all of this information. I was like a student, and the information that she has shared is so valuable, and I have to share this. I didn't know a lot about Juneteenth. What stood out in my mind about Juneteenth is I had a very good girlfriend, and at her church, she wanted to start the tradition. Well, needless to say, for 2 years, we worked to try to, get it going, but people weren't interested. And 1 year, even the minister didn't show up. So Yolanda has all of this history, information that I just hope she can go on. And Rosie, you know what it made me think of when she was giving all this information is how I used to do the Zoom calls for Living Trust to educate people on Living Trust. And now you got more business, more than you can handle. Yeah. So I was thinking, if Yolanda did Zoom classes just to teach us the history, we don't know our own history. And the way things are going now, when they're saying don't teach it in school, but that would be okay if we taught our history to our kids, that would make sense. At least they would know. So thank you, Yolanda. You have to go on a tour. You and your cousin about the barbecue, the red soda, and the ice. You guys have to do a tour. Say, this is what Juneteenth is about. I mean, just thank you guys so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're doing the work that you were sent here to do, Yolanda.
But you know what? I had told Preston.
Callers on hold, we need you to mute just for a minute. Okay. 469, we coming to you in just a minute. Okay. Go ahead, Yolanda.
Just what Barbara was sharing, just hearing me tell the story, how there was a spiritual and an emotional connection. And I had told Preston when we were talking on the phone, he hadn't been there since he was a kid. And I said, when you come, Preston, you're going to make a spiritual and an emotional connection. That's what I told him. And I haven't even talked to him since then. But Preston, was I right or was I wrong?
No, you were right. You were right. I had never been to the cemeteries. I mean, I was a kid when I was there, but I wasn't there to go to the cemetery. I went to my uncle and my aunties, and we hung out there in the woods with the outdoor toilets and getting water from the creek and 5-gallon jugs and stuff like that, But I didn't go to a cemetery. I was a kid. But this time, now that history means something, it really made a profound difference, and there was a spiritual connection to the point where I think, just like you said, Dr. Rosie, people like me who said I'm never leaving California. I live 6 miles from the Pacific Ocean, so I kind of like where I am in the environment. But let me tell you, there's no spirituality in that. The spirituality was coming back to see where your mama and some others and your grandfather and grandmother and everybody grew up and they're buried. And you just kind of make that connection and say, well, even though I haven't been here in 52 years, this is home. I'm back home. So I didn't feel, it was weird because I didn't feel like a stranger. I didn't feel like, well, I don't belong here. It was fantastic.
And you know what? You can feel that spirit. People don't understand how. 469, I'm coming to you next. That is so important. People used to leave Chicago and other places and go back home every Mother's Day or Memorial Day and stand on the ground where their forefather was buried. It's something about that. It kept that connection to your culture and to your people. They would not let a cemetery go unattended. They brought flowers. We are missing that connection. Even now, if I feel troubled, I pull my father's picture out and I put it on the mantelpiece and I ask for guidance. I believe the ancestors are still with us. And so don't underestimate, don't feel like you just bury people and that's it. There is a connection. 469, go ahead. You had a comment. 469.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Hello?
You're on the air.
This is Kari Smith. I'm just on call to support Yolanda on her vision for that.
You're fading out, but thank you for that. Yes. Just show Yolanda really have a lot of support because she's that kind of person. We have something on the board that said, let's put Juneteenth in perspective. Juneteenth holiday is not to be considered as an exchange for real reparation. It is an actual acknowledgement of a great deception by the state of Texas and the government of the United States of America. That's from Olivia Johnson. And from my standpoint, no one is ever trying to align Juneteenth with reparation. And that's a whole nother topic that I could talk to you about, but I won't today. One of the reasons that it's going to be hard for us to even get reparations because Black folks are so divided about who should get it. So we're going to spend 10 years arguing about who should get it. Is the light skin or the dark skin? It is the wealthy or the unwealthy. Okay? So we got some real issues even when it comes to reparation. But in the meantime, Let's make your reparation by educating your kids, educating yourself, getting what's available. If there's grants, if there's loans, whatever out there that you can participate in. The government have money on top of money that black folks never get. They don't know about it, or they feel like they can't fill out the application. Let's focus on literacy. Let's get all our kids reading. Let's get all our kids into technology, and then we can have our reparation. I'm tired of black folk harping about reparation. Yes, we should get it. I want to see it in my time. We owe it. We need to give reparation to every grandmother who have taken care of their kids, their grandkids, because this system have incarcerated the men in our community for little of nothing infraction. We need reparation for a whole lot of things. But in the meantime, what are we going to do to rectify our situation? Don't get me started up in here, because that's not what I came in here to do today. So let me go back to you, Yolanda. Don't y'all mess with me.
Oh, I love it, though.
Oh, Preston, Preston. If Sharice was on this call, we'd have to take a back seat. That's I don't know if you know Sharice Cryer, but she is working. I'll have to connect you, Dr. Rosie. You'll need a 2-hour show, and she can share what she has done about the reparations. I will say everyone is invited to join us for Juneteenth in Geneva. It is important that we have this information and that we can educate, that it's available to educate the next generation, because understand, there are some things my son isn't interested in knowing right now. There are some things my daughter isn't interested in knowing. That's why we put it in writing. Once upon a time, I wasn't interested in knowing. Now, Preston, you know what has happened? All of their parents have, the first cousins, the whole bunch, there's only one uncle living. And now they realize, you know what? We do have this land down there. And then at some point you realize what you have and that you have to preserve it so that you can pass it on to the next generation. But if they've never seen it and they don't know anything about it,
why would they be interested? Right.
Yeah.
Never been there. You never took them back. They don't even know what the state look like. All they hear is that the South is bad. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what happens is when you got to pay $2,200 for a little raggedy one-bedroom apartment in Compton, and you get a letter from someone offering to buy your 40 acres in the country someplace where you never been, and offering you $2,800 per acre, and you sitting up there broke as a joke, and you got 10 acres, well, you know, it's 40 acres in our family, it's 4 of us. I think I'm going to take that $28,000 and sign over my rights to my 10 acres. We have had that happen in one of the families. This joker knew better, though. But that next generation coming up, they don't know. And so now it's up to, we're realizing now that it is our responsibility to take our children there. Now, what my parents and what Preston's parents said, they said the same thing. Keep the land in the family. If you have to sell it to someone in the family. But as far as them putting us in the car and driving there and saying, this is the property lines, this is where your property starts, and this is where your property ends, they never did that. Perhaps it never occurred to them.
And Yolanda,
but now, yes,
exactly.
ma'am.
And the people with property all over the South, you can go back there and plant some trees, and the next generation will have a whole lot of money. Y'all got 600, 100 acres just sitting there. Come on, let's use the senses, the entrepreneurship that God has given us. God has given us what we need to come out of this ditch. Nobody told us that somebody else is supposed to make. God didn't create the white man to take care of us. Okay? Everything we are able to take care of ourselves. Do you realize how much money we could be harvesting, Yolanda, if people went back and just plant trees on their land? Come on.
That's so true.
Just trees. 20 years you got a crop.
Yes, just with this project of remodeling the church, buying the church, and seeing how everybody came together and gave their $10, their $20, their $50, their $100, their $5,000, their $10,000. How people came and put their money together with the project, and now that's when Preston saw the bigger picture. How about we just go ahead? We need a network with just the family, because we have. Families are going to have to come together. And now, like I said, I was looking at the church. He saw something even bigger. We have the World Wide Web now. Everybody needs to know who are the doctors in the family, who are the lawyers, who are the Indian chiefs, who are the mechanics, who are the nurses.
Who live in what state? In case your child decides to go to college in California, they know they got a cousin out here. Who lives in Atlanta? Yeah. We need a connection of information. Look, this show, you guys, is going to rebroadcast at 6 p.m. Yeah, at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and at 9 p.m. Central Time. So all they have to do is go to innerlightradio.com. That's INNERLIGHT, innerlightradio.com. And with this show is going to also, we're going to put it on YouTube, Yolanda, because I think this is a very important show that we're having up with the other mighty shows that we have had up there. But it's time for us, as we celebrate Juneteenth, celebrate the movement, celebrate what we need to do to never be enslaved again. That's what we need to celebrate. When you celebrate freedom, as Harriet Tubman said, once you get a taste of freedom, can't nobody take it from you. But when you don't know that you're not free, you're going to say slaves. Too many black folks are slaves because they don't know they're slaves. Look up the definition of what a slave is and show me what your freedom. You don't have freedom to move. You don't have freedom. Look at all the things that you don't have the freedom to do. Then you will realize what true freedom really is, and you will understand that Juneteenth is symbolic of moving to the next level where there's true freedom. Yolanda, you want to give us some final? And to your cousin Preston, I would love to meet you. Yeah, come on down to San Diego.
I think we can arrange that. I think we're in the same state. Let me just say one last thing as we're getting ready to get out of here. I told all of my family, I don't know a whole lot about white folks, but what I do know about them is that they will never pursue to purchase something that is of no value to them. So when they send you the letters, when they entertain you and say, listen, I'd love to buy this from you, you obviously have something valuable. You may not see it today, it may not even materialize for 10 years, but we've got to be looking at our generations behind us, and we have to be mindful to make sure we set them up for success. Thank you. Thank you for this program today.
Absolutely. Generational wealth needs to be at the top of the list for us. Passing something down to your children. I contend that these children coming into the world should not come in the basement. Somebody needs to make sure that they come in at least on the first floor so they have a chance. They have a chance.
And everybody knows how to create generational wealth. And you know what? I'm going to tell you how you do it. You mimic what your church is doing. Just like y'all come together and pool your resources for somebody else's vision, come together, pool your resources, and create your own vision for your family. We know how to do it.
Yolanda, you said something really important. You said,
I'm sorry, and you know what? I should.
No,
I'm
you
glad
said I'm gonna mimic your church. You can't mimic. I ain't gonna let you get away with that. You can't mimic all of these churches. You want to know what a church should be doing? Get my book, the one. I think it's the one, Economic Black Suffer Worse when it comes to economic. Read that book because it'll tell you if your church is not doing certain things, you need to be looking for another church. That's all I got to say.
Look here. I didn't say what the church, whether the church is doing something or not doing something, but that's how you see how people even in a cult, people will pull their resources together in a cult behind some foolishness. If you want to build generational wealth, why can't you just come together?
That's right.
You
Yolanda,
that's it.
let me close with this story, Yolanda. Listen to this. There was 3 winos sitting in the front of the liquor store, and they wanted to buy some Ripple. Y'all don't know what Ripple is.
Oh, Lord.
So they said, well, how much you got on it? One man said, I have a quarter. The other man said, I have a quarter. The other one said, I don't have anything. They said, well, okay, well, we're going to put what we have together, and that we all going to have a sip of this Ripple. Now, 3 winos sitting in the front of the liquor store had sense enough to take what they had, and even one that didn't have it, to bring him into the pool, because there was something he could do. All I'm trying to say is peace up. Peace up. Peace
Amen.
up. And let's get the job done.
That's true.
Amen.
Peace up.
Amen.
So, Yolanda,
Amen.
I'm telling you, this has been so awesome. You just don't know how joyful I am to have you as a guest. It's who would have thunk it? That's what George Frazier always said. Who would have thunk it?
Yes.
Oh, you have really enlightened us today. And I think people on here are going to look at how they celebrate from now on. We got to celebrate in a new way. In other words, I think what you were saying to us, Yolanda, let's celebrate with meaning. And that's what you're trying to tell us today.
Exactly.
Let's
Know
celebrate
what
with
you're
meaning.
celebrating. Yes.
Celebrate with
Even
meaning.
if you don't know the name of your ancestors, celebrate freedom and act like you're free.
Mm-hmm. And freedom is not downtrodden, bowed down head, waiting for the by and by. Freedom right now. You want to show your children that God is a God of everybody. Do you realize, Yolanda, if we're not careful, you guys, our children are going to think that we are stepchildren to God. Did y'all hear what I said? Did you hear me? Our children are going to think that they are stepchildren to God. Whose fault is it? It's ours, because we're not leaving. We're not following the scripture. Leave an inheritance for your children. And you wonder why we're doing so bad? Because we are out of order. Let's get in order so our kids can raise their head where they can put a smile on their face. That's all I'm saying. Yolanda, thank you so much. As we celebrate freedom, as we celebrate Juneteenth, there's still people don't know that they're not free. There's still folks who don't know. Here we talk about 158 years, and there's still folks who don't know that they're free. And encourage your family to read. Encourage them to read. Because when you read all these books by our historians, our great people that have gone ahead, your children will see a whole different light. If they get off of, they don't have to get off Facebook and Clubhouse, but put a book in their hand every now and then, because a lot of knowledge, if they read some of these books out here, I'm telling you, it will take them to the next level. Yolanda, I appreciate you. Elder Preston, everybody on here, Barbara Lindsay. We had a lot of listeners. We appreciate all of you guys. So every Tuesday, we'll be right here from 10 to 11 Pacific Standard Time.
Okay. And you all mark your calendar for the 3rd weekend in June. I will see you at Juneteenth in Geneva.
Hey, I'm going to be there. I want to see this. You really made an impression on me, girl, okay?
All right.
Me
I'll
too.
see y'all.
Okay.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you. You have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Cousin
Okay, have a great day.
Okay, bye-bye.
You're welcome. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.